Episode 6, Charlie's 20-point profile at 10:41 a.m.
Yeah, first they came for everybody else, and I laughed, and I went along with it, and now they're coming for me. Feeding the alligator only means that they get eaten last. So Michelle Williams was on at the Emmys, where she was wearing a very, very expensive dress and winning an Emmy, as it turns out, and complaining about how she doesn't get paid enough. She gets paid millions of dollars to be in pictures. She's particularly complaining because when they reshot All the Money in the World, because they had to write Kevin Spacey out of history, and then they replaced him with Christopher Plummer and did a lot of the reshoot, she got paid like $1,000 for the reshoot, and Mark Wahlberg got paid like $1.5 million for the reshoot. That's because he has a good agent, and her agent is crap. But instead of firing her agent, she decided to rail against the industry.
I want to say thank you so much to FX and to Fox 21 Studios for supporting me completely and for paying me equally, because they understood that when you put value into a person, it empowers that person to get in touch with their own inherent value. And then where do they put that value? They put it into their work. And so the next time a woman, and especially a woman of color, because she stands to make 52 cents on the dollar compared to her white male counterpart, tells you what she needs in order to do her job, listen to her.
Okay, well, you know what Michelle Williams could do? She could just give up her jobs to women of color, because it turns out that women of color can play like 3/4 of the parts that she plays. I don't see her giving that up. Also, she should talk to her agent if she doesn't like what she got paid. And I'm sorry, making Michelle Williams the face of pay inequality, the woman's worth probably $20 million. No. And that statistic that she is citing, 52 cents on the dollar, is a crap statistic. It has always been a crap statistic. It doesn't adjust for number of hours worked, for job type, for educational level, for years in the workforce, for job level. It doesn't adjust for any of that. The fact that we're supposed to listen to lectures from Michelle Williams about equal pay, yeah, take it up with CAA.
There's a fragrance that's here today, and they call it Charlie. A different fragrance that thinks your way, yeah, they call it Charlie. Kinda young, kinda now, Charlie. Kinda free, kinda wild. Kinda free, kinda wild. Kinda free, kinda wild. Charlie. Kinda fragrance that's gonna stay, and it's here now. Charlie.
Charlie by Revlon, a most original fragrance.
A fragrance to empower women. During the 1960s and early 70s, popular media images reflected the changes taking place in women's lives. A most significant change was the women who portrayed as having a life outside of home, with concerns and aspirations other than being a wife and mother. In 1973, Charlie exemplified the intersection of changes in society and the perfume industry. It broke with the industry transitions by having a male name. New perfumes typically are introduced to the market in the fall, so they would be bought as a Christmas gift. Charlie broke tradition, releasing the fragrance in February 1973, which gave that fragrance an advantage that they did not have to compete with other brands. Importantly, the Charlie girl had self-confidence and interest of her life of her own. She was not longing to attract a man. Charlie was aimed at women who see fragrances as a fun and pleasurable item, not a sex appealer. The fragrance reflected the social trends of the early to mid 1970s, embracing the youth culture, not the women's movement. It ushered in an important new trend, the lifestyle fragrance. Revlon developed a 20-point profile of the Charlie girl and projected these points in its print and television advertisement. And here is the Revlon profile of a Charlie user. Number 1, irreverent and unpretentious. 2, breaking all the rules. 3, is not a Jewish princess. 4, is Jane Fonda in looks and attitude, or could be Carole Lombard. Number 5, doesn't mind being a little outrageous or flamboyant. 6, makes her own rules and having fun or getting something done. 7, has her own integrity based on her own standards. 8, can be tough, believes rules are secondary. 9, is a pace setter, not a follower. 10, can be very soft, but is never passive. 11, flings herself into everything with enthusiasm and heart. 12, eats at Yellowfingers. And I had to look that up. It's a restaurant on East 60th Street and 3rd Street, and it was the rage at the time. It was the epicenter of cutting-edge fashion where all the hip people hung out. 13, believes she's different from other girls. 14, she is very relaxed about sex. 15, has outgrown sharing a summer house. What? 16, is bored with the typical fragrance advertising. 17, wears pants to work, even though it's against the rules. 18, mixes Gucci and blue jeans. 19, loves roller coasters, hot dogs, Fortuny silks, its pleated cotton silk evening dresses intended as underdress to be worn at home for very informal encounters. Number 20, has a sense of self and sense of commitment. Today on Something Came from Baltimore, it's episode 6 of Kind of Free, Kind of Wow. Conversation with Laurie Greene. Remember that Something Came from Baltimore is a jazz, blues, and R&B podcast and radio show, and it's not normally about Baltimore. And today it really isn't. We are talking to Laurie Greene. Laurie Greene is an associate professor of anthropology at Stockton University in New Jersey, where she has taught since 1986. She is the founder and chair of the LGBTQ Youth Safe Space Initiative at Stockton University and an advocate for local LGBTQ community, and the author of Drag Queens and Beauty Queens, Contesting Femininity in the World's Playground. And let's get into that episode. Okay, so I have the ability to pass, and my voice is deeper or whatever, and I win. I'm lucky. I'm a white guy who is able to run around the world, and most people don't really think too much about it. I always tell people, well, obviously I'm gay. Look at me, I'm adorable. Like, there's no reason why, I'd be single. So, I mean, it's real obvious. But, I remember looking at a picture of me. We were on a vacation. It was I was seventh grade. And my hand was limp, in it. Like, it was just like my arm was, just there, but my hand was limp. And I was like, don't ever do that again. Don't ever, like, just the fact that my hand was limp. And my sisters made fun of it. They're like, look at your hand. You look gay in that picture. And I remember, like, getting to a point where I wasn't out yet, but I was old enough to, I was trying to make that decision that I should be out. And the word hey sounds like gay from a past, like close by. So I'd hear the word hey, and I'm like, call me gay. Like, we're gays out there. And I would get a tingle down my spine to a point where I would just kind of like be physically sick. Like, I felt like I was like such a lying thing going on, where I had no idea who I really was, or I knew who I was, but I knew that they would not like me once they found out who I was. And it's just a lot. It's a lot to unpack that I could do. But you're right. Like, my best friend he's really gay, and he seems gay, and everyone knows he's gay as soon as he walks in the door. So it's, initially, I was embarrassed to have him go in public with him, and I found that was my fault. That's my issue, not his, and I had to fight through it. And now, obviously, I don't care. But the idea that there was nothing wrong with him, and that there's no reason that we should be limited on what we can do together because of my issue. It's a lot. Oh my God, I could talk about this forever.
There's actually a term for that in sociology.
Oh, good. You're perfect for
Yeah,
this.
it's called nearing. Nearing. It's like when you're in, let's say you're in a room with a bunch of straight people and your friend walks in and he's like being really gay, like uber gay, and you're like, oh God, why won't he stop that? And what sociologists believe that is, it's like coming in contact with like a stereotypic, what you see as a stereotypic rendition of your stigma in a room full of people that can see it, that can judge you. And really what it comes from is a fear of us being found out ourselves in that same room.
Yes.
It's not about them, as you said, it's about me. And that experience is called nearing. And it expresses the internalized homophobia.
Yeah. My
My
cover's blown. My cover's blown by hanging with him.
If he keeps doing that, he might blow my cover.
Yeah.
And that's what you're worried about, and yeah. And it's a shame because if we were aware of that, then we probably wouldn't do it, but we don't learn about these things. I think the topic of stigma, I really think it should be taught in like junior high school, like when they're able to understand it, because think about how we suffered at that age. Trying to make sure whatever stigmas we all had, whatever it is, my nose is too big, I'm fat, I have pimples on my face, I'm gay, I'm whatever. They can be worse and worse and worse. Think about how we suffered. And a lot of bullying comes from kids who have those same stigma, but don't want anyone to see it. So they beat up that kid that shares their stigma instead of being found out themselves. I mean, I think it would be very useful, in helping kids get better self-esteem and stopping a lot of these issues of bullying. If we actually taught this subject, the subject isn't don't bully. The subject is understanding why we bully, because even though you didn't say anything to him, there was like this internalized bullying going on that you were doing. If you could have heard your thoughts, it would have been pretty mean to say, right? I mean, it would be pretty awful to say if you could have heard your thoughts.
Oh, no, I was terrible. And I'm working through it, I'm like working through it. I'm like, this is me. This is all this. But you're right. Like, I want to live a life where I can like slip into situations and not be found but when I have him around, my cover's blown. It'll always be blown. But
exactly.
And that's, I can't have, my friendship for him is strong, and I have to look at myself and say, okay, obviously this is my issue. And you know what? I have this conversation with a lot of gay guys. Like they really admire like RuPaul drag queens, but they don't want to be friends with them. You know what I'm saying? They're like, okay, well, I admire the fact that they are talented and drag queens, but I would never invite one into my house. That kind of thing.
Wow. When I did the Drag Queens and Beauty Queens book, I came across this so much. Like, it's like drag queens are both revered at one level and sort of feared for that, that connection to them. Like you're saying, the contagion of gayness that they carry. But also, they're just like the reason drag queens are on the front lines as trans women are and trans men is that, they're just a visual symbol of being unapologetically gay.
Yeah.
And for those of us that aren't that secure or need that a degree of passing or covering in our lives to be successful, we believe it's eternally dangerous to us, to have these folks around. And I know a lot of the drag queens that I've interviewed over the years and spoken to, they have trouble having relationships with gay men, and they're gay men. If they're gay men, they have trouble because of their careers. They're performance artists. But they there's a thinking about them that they're sort of like maybe it's a bit misogynistic. Again, that there's something about them that's little bit too feminine, like too much of a woman. There's actually a woman in there. They're not gay. There's like a little bit of that thing they don't want to be or be with in there. And I found that I was shocked in the beginning about it, but I had heard it so many times that it's hard to have a relationship. And in fact, not all of them, but a lot of the people that I know that are drag queens, I'm thinking in my head right now, aren't in relationships. Yeah. And I've never known them to be. I can think of one that is in serial relationships right now, thinking in my head quickly, but because I think it's tough. It's tough for them. And I do think there's probably more in that to learn, about why that's the case.
Yeah. We were talking about the trans. I was at church this weekend, and a trans person came up to the microphone and just, we're allowed to share our thoughts. And she said, I don't want you to be friends with me if you're pitying me. There's no reason for pity. He said, if by chance that there is pity in your heart, then the issue is on you. It's not, I don't want that friendship. And I thought, do people pity like a transgender person, like to be friends with them? Like, oh, I accept you. I know you're less. I don't know. I do have some transgender friends but they're not really close to me. Like I would barely invite anyone into the house, but they're not in that level that I could invite them. I could, I guess, but then would I be pitying them? I don't know now. Now I have to think about my internal.
Yeah, I think what he or she's saying is, that I don't want you to be friends with me because I'm trans and you want me to have friends. Like you feel like it's nice to be friends with me. Like you're going to prove that you're not transphobic by being friends. Yes. And because who wants that? I mean, I don't want you to be friends with me for any reason, but you like me. Like as a human being, like my personality. I don't want you to be friends with me because of my job, my status, my money, my looks. Nobody wants that. And especially when it's something that's stigmatized, it feels like pity. I mean, it may not be pity, actually. It may be, but it may feel like it regardless, because it's something that shouldn't be the subject of your friendship. It shouldn't be a factor in it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what that person was feeling.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is like aggressive. I said, this is an aggressive message at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And I was like,
I think that the tact that some people take is aggressive because that's the only way that they feel like they're heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it stuck with me. Other people shared it, and that's the only thing I can remember. It stuck with me and made me think. So, then it was the right thing to do,
Yeah, I love, my kids went to Quaker school. So like, I love meeting for worship. I thought that meeting, I guess that's what you're talking about, of course, because there was meeting for business too. But I used to love meeting for worship for them because they really had to learn how to, express themselves and their beliefs in an honest way, and listen to other people, and I thought it's one of the greatest things about being Quaker and going to meeting is this necessity to be able to listen and speak your mind at the same time.
Yes. But also it's a skill of being quiet and, initially that, and just sitting there and being, and initially, the first time it took months, but it's the removing the noise inside your head, whatever is going on. And sometimes there's just like loud noises that are in there. There's actual thoughts, but if you can remove those, through time, then I look at the what comes in, like what comes in at once everything's removed, and why is it coming in? Like what is this vital? I know that I called up a friend of mine. I said, "Did you feed your snake lately?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "No." I said, "Well, it just came to me that you might need to pay a little more attention to your snake." And he's like, "Wow, that's so random." I said, "I know. It just came up in the Quaker meeting. I don't know, but that's a wonderful experience to just to give your brain a break and remove all those with the noise inside of it. And I think that's a gift also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you found that for yourself.
Yeah, well, that's a yoga piece where when I I was in search of a church that was really important. Like, I'm going to find a church. So I got really involved in the Catholic Church, and I got to a point where they wanted me a Franciscan, and I declined it and moved on. So every Sunday I would walk in, like I lived in Philly. So I would just go to churches and just experience whatever was going on. And then I found the Quaker one, and I said, okay, I think this one's going to work for me. Well, the one thing that I thought that I really liked about, like, I would pray, and I would sit there and just try to get everything out of my head, but I would do deep breathing, and that would help me relax enough to clear my head. And that's where I thought I was spiritual, like, oh, this is the spiritual piece. But when I started doing yoga, I was like, oh, it's the breath that is the spiritual piece, is that I was breathing to relax, breathing to erase everything out of my head. And I thought, oh, that's spiritual. But it's the breath work through yoga that I started doing. I went, oh, that's the feeling. That's the feeling.
I can't agree more in the technique that I practice and teach. A lot of times you go to class and like the people just go breathe or follow your breath, but there's no instruction in it. And I can't tell you how, in my style, how much time I spend teaching breathing and the importance of it. And like, I'm shocked to hear you say that breathing is spiritual, because I believe that, but it's hard for me to convince people. I think we need to remember that our breath is the only autonomic system in our body that we have control over. We'll breathe whether we want to or not, as you know that if you tried to hold your breath as a kid. But in protest, right? Eventually, if you pass out, you will breathe. But we also it's the only system we can control, and through it, we can control other things. So when we control our breathing, we can control our heart rate, which we can't control otherwise, right? When we control our breathing, we can control the reactiveness of our nervous system, at least our sympathetic nervous system. When we control our breathing, we can understand what's going on inside of us. And I find this, people know this intuitively. They know that their breath is them. It's like the most intimate experience you can have with someone is being close enough to hear them breathing, and we all know this because when I tell people in class, for example, in the style that I teach, the technique that I have is you have to have an audible breath. Like you hear it, people hear it. And when people first start, they have such a hard time doing this. And I know it's because when someone else can hear you breathe normally, they're very close. It's very intimate, right? You're right next to them. You're breathing on each other, right? And so having someone hear you breathe, it's almost too intimate in a room of people you don't know. Like if I can hear you breathing, I know something about you I might not know otherwise. And people intuitively know this, but I always say that the most intimate experience you can have with yourself is listening to yourself breathe for an hour. I mean, it's a very intimate experience with yourself. And so I'm thrilled to hear you say that, because I find that to be extremely true. And it's why I think I don't need a religious or an institution of religion myself. I've had people say to me stuff like, oh, Laurie, you should come to the UUs, you love the Unitarians, or you should come to Quaker meeting, and I say, I'm really not searching for anything. I think I have it, on my own. But that's just me. I think there's, we should go everywhere we can to find that sense of communing with everything around us. And if we need a community of people to do that, do it, so but I can't agree with you more about breathing. And you can learn a lot about yourself by just stopping and looking at how you're breathing in that moment.
Yeah.
I do it automatically now, because as soon as I get upset, my heart rate goes up. I can feel it. I see what happens to my breathing. And if I'll try to calm myself down, let's say by controlling the only thing I can, which is my breath, and there you go. and you hope that you settle yourself with that. And it is, you know, but I'm someone that believes we're principally embodied, you know, we're not our minds, and that our bodies have so much to do with influencing what we're thinking and how we experience the world, you know, and how we interpret the world. We interpret it through our experience, and the only thing we can experience it through is our bodies, you know. And I think we underplay the importance of that, of our, you know, physical body and its working, and what our mind is like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole like religious to breathing like experience. Like I was working at QVC, and I was so stressed out, and I could feel my muscles, you know, tighten up around, you know, my stomach, and my posture was bad. And I was like, I said, I feel like I'm going to pass out or something. Like I feel stressed. This is stress. And it was all where all I could do was breathe. And I realized that was really the only like toolbox that I have. I'm curious, why can we bring that into schools? Like, is there any way to bring like yoga techniques of at least breathing into school? Because I feel the anxiety of like taking a test, like right before a test, would be wonderful if everyone could just breathe. I mean, I talked to a teacher, and they said they're not allowed to do that because there will be people who would think that you're forcing a religion on them.
Yeah. I mean, I know there are people, I have some friends who have, you know, brought those kind of programs into the schools, but yeah. And, you know, there may be, depending on your district, you know, there's always going to be somebody who thinks you're trying to push some weird religious practice, on them. But, you know, that's the state, we've talked about this, that's the state of our culture right now, right? Is just to be basically, you know, people disagreeing with one another about everything. And, but it is a shame. And I think where they are doing this, I know I remember hearing about a school where instead of detention, that's what they were giving the kids. Basically, they would go in a room and learn how to meditate.
Wow. And you know what? Wow, what a gift.
And I thought, what a great idea, you know. And of course, there's ways to do that without sitting still, which may not be appropriate for kids, you know. But just, you know, techniques of breathing and stuff that make you focus, because all meditation is focused attention. It's not thinking. It's not necessarily being quiet, you know. You know, some people chant when they meditate or listen to music, or, you know, it's not what people, I think it's not a narrow thing that people think it is. You know, it's much more just about trying to focus in a certain way to look at what's going on right now. And maybe use that to look at what you did that got you into this detention today. You know, like, you know, let's just quiet down and think about it. We're not punishing you. You're going to sit here and think about it. And I thought that seems so in the right direction. You know, obviously it depends how people are pulling that off, you know, what they're actually doing in there, if it's effective or not. But I think if it's done properly, it would be very effective. And, you know, much more likely to be responded to in a positive way by the kids who are in that, you know, because I remember when it was like for me, when I was in school in detention, people were just like, thought it was, you know, they were just snarky about it. They just thought it was a joke. You know, it's sort of a badge of honor. How long do I have to sit in here with like a grumpy look on my face, you know, doing nothing, you know, looking disruptive. But yeah, to turn it into an opportunity for developing strategies for coping with some of your less desirable emotions and behaviors would be a great idea, right? Yeah. It really would be.
This is, I had another idea, and it wasn't my idea. It's something I heard maybe on a podcast or something, where we wouldn't identify a child, any gender, until, you know, maybe they were 6 or 7, because the cues of like, oh, boys wear blue and girls wear pink, and man up and tough up, and like allow a child to be to express themselves any way they feel before they're kind of told how to do it. Now, whoever made this decision, I mean, is saying it better than I could. But what they were saying is, like, withhold any kind of gender roles until they're older, until they are developed enough to know where they need to go, because people are, gender ranges are all over the place, kind of like, and they're not allowed to fully evaluate who they are. And I know that we talk about me passing, I would be different. I can guarantee I would be a different person if I had that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that would entail, obviously, this is a tough nut to crack there, because that would entail changing the whole culture, especially since ostensibly or supposedly we're in like the younger generations don't care about gender, yet they have these gender reveal parties where they want to know the sex of the fetus before it's born, and then they want to celebrate their sex before they're even born. And this is something I can't wrap my head around, having 3 kids. Like, I'm like, that sounds like you guys care way more about gender than I ever did. I didn't even want to know what the sex of my kids were, because it's like, to me, like, there are so few surprises in life, and that was one of them. That was a good one, a big one. And I wanted to be surprised, like, because
in utero, you wouldn't find out, like, if it was a boy or girl. You're like, just don't tell me.
I never did. I mean, well, first of all, when I was having children, which, my son just had a birthday yesterday. My kids are pushing 40. You didn't have the same technology, people were not just getting ultrasounds. You got an ultrasound when something was wrong. They thought something was wrong, so you didn't know. Or if you got an amniocentesis, you would know the sex, but nobody got them unless you were over 40 and you had to, So now they routinely do tests which could show the gender of the baby, or the sex of the baby, I should say, based on what they see on the images, right, of an ultrasound. Or if they do, obviously, a amniocentesis, they're going to have the DNA sample. But I mean, if I had that technology, and I did with my last one, I told them, no, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. So I think when we're celebrating a child's gender before they're born, we've got a long way to go with that kind of a thing, if we're going to make it so we don't have gender until they're 5 or 6 years old. We've got a long way to go with that.
Oh yeah, long way to go. How would you
uphill,
How would you get that everyone to buy in on it? Where,
no, I don't know the answer to that.
The stress on boys right now to be uber masculine and not to express their feelings and to man up and not cry or show emotion. Like the idea that thinking is masculine, but feeling is feminine is, I can only tell you that I ran cross country and I did a mile. To this day, it was the first mile I ever ran in my life, and a girl almost beat me. And all they were screaming is like, "Don't let a girl beat you! Don't let a girl beat you!" And I was horrified. I had nothing left in the tank, and she didn't beat me. But that whole last leg of that mile of terror that this woman's going to beat me, it's like, it's so unnecessary. I don't know. It's just like, it's a lot.
That whole, a woman, don't let a girl beat you, when you become an adult, becomes, how you treat your female boss, or, how you look at the person to get on your committee you're working on, the woman who seems to be more competent than you, or, get more done than you. And there goes the pattern,
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. I can only tell you the word bitch has been used many times to talk about, not me, not from my mouth, but from, yeah, I'm an angel, but, from coworkers. They're like, "Oh, she's such a bitch," where they wouldn't say that about a guy. Or they expect women in groups, some of them, to be the busy bees of it all. Like, you're the one taking notes. You're the one doing this. You're doing that, where it wouldn't even be an option for a male to do that busy work. Like,
they want them to do the work, but not the important work. They don't want to get they do the important work, then they're, because I've been called this, they're somebody that, you have to have it your way. you have to do you have to micromanage everything, well, no, you guys didn't do it, so I did it, and that's what happened. But I feel that same thing that you're talking about, which is there's something wrong because a woman did this and I didn't accomplish it. So there must be something wrong with her. She must be overly aggressive, or
now she's the bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there is no term for a guy who's a bitch in business. You know what I'm saying? There is nothing. What is the equivalent to a man? Like a woman's a bitch in business. What is the equivalent to that for a male? I don't think there is one.
Well, that tells you something then, if there isn't. Well, there's certainly bad names you could call a guy. I've done it.
But, oh yeah, he's a dickhead or blah blah blah.
Where they say like there are a lot of different terms for women, pejorative terms that have to do with their sexuality, but none for men. We create terms of negative terminology for people based on what we already believe about them. The ways that they can fail. So when women are aggressive, we have lots of negative terms for that, but not so many for men, when women are sexually active or promiscuous, we have lots of bad terms for that, but not for men. We have to use female terms. We have to call a man a whore, we don't, because we don't judge men on those things like we judge women. And I'm certain there's things for men too, but yeah. And it's funny because one of the things I saw again when I was studying drag is if you look at the way that drag queens read each other, and in particular, but gay men in general, the way they read each other, it's always based on those same features that usually women are chastised for, like how fat you are, like you're not pretty enough, you're not good looking enough, or you're sexually promiscuous, or you're bitchy, and really what they're doing is reading men by calling them negative things that they normally society would ascribe to women. And I found that very interesting.
Wow, that's I never heard that before, but that's 100% correct.
On the one hand, I think drag queens present themselves as, let's say, fat or promiscuous or sloppy. You know what I mean? Things that just aren't feminine, aren't correctly feminine. Do you know what I mean? Things that women have to watch themselves, police themselves for. I think they do it, if we look at it in a way that's pro-woman, it's that what they're pointing out is, look at the things women are chastised for. This is absurd. And the other reading is that, of course, the opposite, that, that thank God we're not really women, so I tend to go with the first one, that they're pointing out the absurdity of the kinds of ways that women are judged when they put on those clothes. They get to be judged like that as well. I prefer that explanation. But if you look at it, it's so interesting. And it speaks to all the things that drag can tell us about our gender norms in general, and what a complex and interesting performance art it is.
And you would say that, like, I got dolled up. I did the best I could with my makeup, hair, and it's still not enough. I still have flaws. I'm still, a mess, or, I'm still not perfect, And
well, that's what reading points out, right? When you read somebody, I mean, it's like, you think you're all that, but, oh my God, girl, you don't know it. But like when your eyelashes is falling off, like there's nothing more embarrassing than that. It's just a freaking eyelash, But that's the kind of thing women have to, are policed on all the time.
We have like 7 minutes left.
Okay.
We have another half-hour book. Do you want to continue, or do you think we hit the tank?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I want to tell you why I decided to reach out to you. So I want to keep on going. I want to build it up. I want to build it up as a.
Let's go to the next one then.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's do it.
See you on the other side again.
All right.
got no time for me. You've got big things to do. Well, my fine chickadee, I've got hot news for you. I've got your number. I know you inside out. You ain't no Eagle Scout. You're all at sea. Oh, yes, you brag a lot. Wave your own flag a lot. But you're unsure a lot. You're a lot like me, and I've got your number. And what you're looking for, and what you're looking for, just suits me fine. We'll break the rules a lot. We'll be damn fools a lot. But then why should we not? How could we not combine when I've got your number and I've got that glow you've got. I've got your number and baby, you know you've got mine. I've got your number. I know you inside out. You ain't no Eagle Scout. You're all at sea. Oh, yes, you brag a lot. Wave your own flag a lot. But you're unsure a lot. You're a lot like me, and I've got your number. And what you're looking for, and what you're looking for, just suits me fine. We'll break the rules a lot. We'll be damn fools a lot. But then why should we not? How could we not combine when I've got your number and I've got that glow you've got. I've got your number and baby, you know you've got mine. You've got mine. You've got mine. You've got mine.
You can binge all 14 episodes now. They are available. The link is in the show notes. Episode 6 is over. Episode 7, The History of New York Avenue, is up next. You can binge all now. All conversations are available for your listening pleasure. And end of episode.